What is going on, everyone? Happy Thursday. Welcome into another edition of GC Live. I'm your host, Jack Veltri, as always, joined by my good friend and 2010 College World Series champion and former South Carolina right-handed pitcher and fellow New York Yankees fan and movie addict, just like yours truly, Ethan Carter. Ethan, we're back for another week, man. How's it going?
We are indeed. I hope the weather's a little better down there than it is here in Virginia. It's done.
It's
it's done.
It's done
nothing.
It is like
that's
70,
excellent.
It's like almost 80 degrees and sunny. It's insane. And then next Monday is gonna be like 40. We live in the weirdest state when it comes to weather, but it'll be fine.
Yeah, well, it's done nothing but rain here the last 24 hours and going to continue that. So I get to be nice and cozy and watch the boys inside the house here this weekend. So pump for that.
Yeah, we've got plenty to get into. We've got a busy show today, as always. South Carolina is coming off a few nice wins earlier this week, which we're going to talk about plenty. And we're also going to get into the Salute the Troops weekend over at Founders Park this weekend, starting Friday. South Carolina take on Army, Navy, and Air Force. It's a very unique opportunity for this program to face the three service academies that in the United States, 3 of the 5, I should say, and it should be a lot of fun. We're going to get into that plenty later on in the show, but real quick, just talking to you guys real quick about our friends over with Clint Hammond of CMG Home Loans. If you're in the market to buy a home, give a call to our guy Clint. 803-422-6797, NMLS number for him, 71597, or go to clinthammond.com for more info. If you are in the market to buy a home, Clint will help you out, take you through the process step by step, and get you on that path towards buying that dream home that you've always wanted. He's a lifelong Gamecock fan, longtime supporter of Gamecock Central, and he's been in the mortgage industry for over 20 years now. So get in touch with him. He'll help you out along the way. Thank you, Clint. All right, Ethan. So let's get into the basics just ahead of this weekend. Again, Gamecocks playing the Salute the Troops weekend. Friday, Army. Saturday, Navy. Sunday, Air Force. Should be a really fun weekend. Pitching rotation remains the same as last weekend. Riley Goodman is going tomorrow afternoon. And then Ant Phillips on Saturday. And then Brandon Stone on Sunday. Your thoughts?
I think it's perfect. I thought, I thought the pitching was excellent. I think the one thing we can take away from the first 5 games here is that the pitching staff is going to be a strength. I thought all 3 starters did very well last weekend. I know Amp had that one kind of shaky inning. I believe it was the second inning or so, but other than that, I thought all 3 starters did exactly what you're wanting your starters to do on an opening weekend. And I think, this is a good step up in competition for them this weekend and, a chance to really put together, start stacking those strong outings.
Yeah, I thought they all pitched very well, honestly, too. Now, again, they only went about 70 pitches last weekend each. And in the case of like Brandon Stone, he went 60 pitches. All those guys went at most 4 innings. You could speak to this a little better. I would imagine those guys are going to be able to pitch into the 5th inning. Paul Maneri was very willing to throw Connor Ciccoli about 5 innings on Tuesday against Wofford with 60 pitches. He thought about bringing him back out for a 6th inning, but didn't want to overuse him in his first start. I got to imagine those guys probably like 75 pitches this weekend. What do you think?
Yeah, generally the build up is you're looking at about 10 to 15 pitches every outing, and then once you get to obviously your max of like 100, 110, whatever guys are maxing out these days. So they'll use this one. Like I said, I think everybody but Brandon went at least 70 pitches. So you're going to be looking at probably between 80, 85 pitches, and that way the next start, the following weekend when they get to Clemson, that's when you're probably looking at guys making their full workloads, from that point on.
Yeah, so we'll see how much longer they go. The good news is the pitching staff has been doing really well through these first 5 games of the season. I think that is a nice but also welcome surprise to see this staff that struggled so much under Terry Rooney last year They really revitalized that staff in the offseason here, bringing in a lot of new pitchers. Only a few guys returning, like Brandon Stone's one of them. And then you get, Jake McCoy's down for the year. Alex Philpott's out for a few weeks. So you're already down a little bit on your pitching staff. But Ethan, overall, you're a pitcher. I mean, you can explain this just as well as anyone from what you've watched. Besides the starting pitching, I think these guys have looked really good so far, aside from like a few outings here and there from a few guys.
Yeah, I mean, the worst outing you had from all your guys is from one of your more trusted relievers, and Parker Merlot. I'm not worried about Parker one bit. So I think from the staff, you're seeing improvement in the right places. Not walking as many guys through 5 games, only 16 walks, and you compare that with 54 strikeouts. So we're seeing some more swing and miss. We're seeing guys attack the zone, and I'm very I have good feelings and good thoughts about the way the staff's looking early on. Again, it is early. The competition will only continue to get better, but the things that you're looking for, everybody's velo looks pretty strong, and you're not walking nearly as many guys. I mean, even when things were going well last year with the pitching staff, the free bases were still always a little too high. There was always a lot of traffic. I think guys really did well of getting ahead early and getting those early outs to where they can relax and throw strikes and not always have to worry about making that perfect pitch. So I'm intrigued, or I'm intrigued, but I'm really impressed by the start to the season for the staff as a whole.
And this is what I think a lot of people, the fans, are going to bring up is, okay, it's early. It's 5 games, first off. So we're not saying like, man, this pitching staff, like give Terry Rooney a raise. Like, it's just vastly improved. All we're saying is they're off to a good start. And I was thinking about this last night, and this comment right here literally sums it up. Last year's pitching did well against non-conference teams, and then SEC play happened, and it was not very good, to say the least. The pitching staff took a complete nosedive once conference play began. I'm still I think the jury is going to be out until we get to, obviously, next weekend when Clemson, you're playing them. But SEC play is going to be the real indicator. I will say this, and we talked about this 2 weeks ago with some of the games they lost in the late innings because of the pitching staff and the fact they could never really hold a lead. I'm going to be honest, if they find a way to pitch, just doesn't even have to be amazing. It could be half decent compared to how last year went. You're going to win those games that you lost last year. I just think the offense, what we've seen the last few games, is very much what they should be this year, hopefully. Yep. And I think you're going to get enough run support this year to where it's like the pitching staff is carrying you right now, but they don't need to carry you every single game. Just you got to get the outs when it matters most.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like I said, from top to bottom, you had a lot of guys, do well in extended spots too. I mean, Riley Goodman was very good, and it was impressive to see that Josh Gunther came in afterwards and threw very well too. It was nice to see those guys build off the guy they were coming in for. Like I said, aside from one bad inning from Parker, I thought the staff did really well this first start of the season.
Yeah, they've really pitched well so far. And on the other side, offensively, we haven't spoken since last Thursday, and it's not really an old news story at this point because it just happened a few days ago. Before we get to the offense, let me get your thoughts on what Paul Mainieri had to say the other day. I know I texted you like as soon as it happened, and in case you've missed out, if you're watching this, I don't know how you've missed it, but if you have for some reason, it's okay. We'll fill you in. After Saturday's game against Northern Kentucky, Paul Mainieri was asked, I think, about why, like the runners in scoring position, right? Because South Carolina had gone 0 for 7 with runners in scoring position in a 1-run loss to Northern Kentucky on Saturday. And he explained, didn't hit well enough with runners in scoring position. Then he mentioned, he didn't even need to mention this, is my thought, is that the players were tired and sore. Like he was texting with guys the night before. You mentioned Tyler Bach as an example of like a guy that was like cramping up and whatnot. And so he kind of inadvertently blamed the loss on the fact that they were tired and sore. I was stunned because it's opening weekend and we're talking about being tired after 3 games. It was nuts. They didn't take batting practice, which I don't think is as big of a deal now. The more that I think about it, because it's like they took indoor BP in the cage, and it's like. But he did regret it immediately after. He's like, "Yeah, we probably should have taken batting practice outside." So I don't know. And the other thing is, and Adam's thinking right along the same lines. They do have a doubleheader. I even asked Paul Maneri about that later in the press conference. Like, hey, you guys have a doubleheader against Princeton in March, and you're likely going to have more doubleheaders throughout the year with rain and whatnot.
Yep.
What? How are you going to be prepared for that? And so you've been through this before as a player. I'm sure you get tired throughout the season, but I can't ever remember a time where a coach has publicly just said, "Yeah, we were tired and sore after 3 games." You don't say that out loud in a press conference.
Yeah.
Maybe he wanted to get a message across to the guys, because that's what the press conferences are. They are for the fans and the reporters, but also I think it's a way for a coach to get a message across to the team like, hey, we can't be like this anymore.
Sure. Yeah. Kind of goes back to what we, like I said, kind of something we talked about. I think I mentioned a couple weeks ago that coach is going to be good for a quote, man. And it's not always the best to play devil's advocate for the fan base here and to kind of give another side to it. The preseason is shorter than it was when I played. We had 3 weeks of scrimmages. We had about 5-6 weeks of build-up time. It is a condensed preseason now. And for your first day of the year to go out there and play 18, and I think this is part of what he said. He played a lot of those guys all 18 innings.
Yeah, he did.
I think that is just a misstep in the roster construction. Now, I know some guys were down. Like I know that I'm blanking on the name right now. I know Will Craddock wasn't available that first day. Mm-hmm. I know a couple guys just were not available, but I think that the first game of the season to run your guys out there for 18 innings and then turn around and play them another 9 innings the next day. Mm-hmm. That's a choice, man. I think we, kind of the preview that we gave with this team is the depth's pretty good this year. Like I don't feel like this is a team where the drop off is not nearly as big as it has been in a couple years past between the bench and the starters. I think it is a deep roster with guys that can come in and contribute. So I think I don't know whether it was he was trying to absolve some of the guys that played, if he was trying to just put a reasoning behind of what happened, but some of those things are better left unsaid. And you don't want to use that as an excuse, but that is not always beneficial to run your guys out there and play them 18 innings and then turn around and then play them another 9. That's my own personal. Sure. You know what? I can definitely see that as trying to get some of these guys to get into some game shape, but
they've been playing for 3 weeks. I don't want to hear that. I get it. It's opening day, but
yep.
And here's the other thing. You mentioned about like not playing other guys. It's true. They really, I think, only made like 2 lineup changes there were only 2 different guys in the starting lineup in the second game of the doubleheader. So about 7 of those guys were playing all 3 games this past weekend, which is a lot. But you're going to be doing that throughout the year anyway. And the point that Paul, I think, brought up when I asked him about like, how are you going to like be prepared for these doubleheaders moving forward? he's like, like, what am I supposed to do? Take like Tyler Bach out of the lineup and Dawson Harmon and Talmadge Lee? Like, no, I understand that. And that's where your point about the depth kind of, I guess, gets, I don't know what the right word is, but it's like, it kind of sounded like Paul was like a little bit weary about his depth, which I think you should be able to play most of these guys and be okay against Northern Kentucky.
Yeah, exactly.
If it's like Florida in a few weeks and you have a doubleheader, yeah, you're playing your guys for the most part, and you're playing them on the next day too. But look, these guys should be used to it by now. And this is a nice comment brought up here by Adam Ritter. Like like these guys, pretty much all of them should have played travel ball at some point and
sure.
4 games in a weekend, maybe 5 or maybe 6. It's how it goes, right? I remember playing travel ball growing up and playing like 5 games in a weekend. And so, like, these guys should be used to it. I don't think there's any excuse for them to be tired. And I think the message has been clear has gotten to them clearly these last 2 games with the way they've played. Performances have been a lot better. I get it. It's against Wofford and Gardner-Webb, but you play the teams on your schedule, and South Carolina has handled them pretty well for the most part as we transition into the midweek games. Gamecocks won 8-2 on Tuesday night out in Spartanburg over a Wofford team that made the NCAA tournament 2 years ago, and I think they beat LSU in a regional game, if I'm not mistaken. This is when we were out in me and you were out in Raleigh. I think they beat LSU in a regional game, so they're not far removed from doing that. And then you beat Gardner-Webb and you run rule them. You're supposed to do that. And the offense had 17 hits yesterday. So what were your takeaways from those midweek games?
I thought the approaches were better. I think over the weekend the guys were juiced up and ready to hit the ball. And you saw a lot of early count hacks. Not always the best approach to kind of see what a guy's got and kind of make adjustments throughout. I thought they did a much better job of that these last 2 games. I think those guys that went in with the plan. I think I saw. I think it was you that had tweeted out, or maybe it was one of the other reporters. But the game plan is to hit the ball really hard right now for these guys and to hit it all over the park. And I think they've kind of dialed in. They saw what didn't really work in the first 3 games, and they kind of dialed in on, all right, let's try to highlight some parts of the zone where we know we can do some damage, and it really seemed that approach took effect here in these last couple of games where they got in some good hitters counts, and then when they got their pitches, they really put good swings on them and made some real hard, solid contact. So I definitely think that the approaches seem to improve, after, kind of getting some of that early information, after those first 3 games.
Yeah, last 2 games they've hit a lot better. 9 for 25 and with runners in scoring position the last 2 games here in the midweek, and they've hit the ball a lot better. One guy in particular who's hit the ball really well is this comment here is alluding to. Got to talk about Will Craddock, freshman fielder, made his first game yesterday against Gardner-Webb. Went 3 for 3 with 2 singles, a triple, and reached base all 5 times as he walked twice. That's as good of a freshman college debut as I've ever seen, Ethan. And I'm sure you could speak to some guys that maybe had like really good freshman debuts. Ethan Petrie's the big name that I'm sure a lot of people are going to compare this guy to because they're the same size and they hit for a lot of power. Some of these balls that Craddock was hitting off the bat, his first hit was 110 miles an hour, just a line drive at third base, got knocked down. And then that triple he hit was 108 off the bat. You have to start this guy every game moving forward. Like you have to start him. And that's the thing. Like he doesn't have an exact position right now to start because Bo Hollins is at first base, but not like Bo's been hitting very well so far. And this guy can play literally anywhere in the infield. He's quick. He's big. He's strong. Hits for power. Hits for good, hard contact. He's literally everything I think you could want in a baseball player. And I don't think that's exactly exaggeration given it's a 1-game sample size. South Carolina's been high on him since his sophomore year of high school. So
yeah,
there's something there. He hit really well in the preseason. I think this guy is going to do some real special things in South Carolina for the next few years.
Yeah, no, I really like the lineup they trotted out there yesterday. I thought Eric Parker, brought a little bit, it seemed like he was just in the middle of things yesterday. Like he seemed to really take advantage of his opportunity. Obviously, Will, a name where I want to highlight here. While we're talking about what's happened, Talmadge LeCroy's had a great start to the season.
Oh yeah, he's so well.
He's really swinging the bat well. I think kind of moving KJ around in the batting order has been good for him. I know he hit like 5th or 6th on Tuesday, and then I think he hit 2nd last night. So I think that just kind of moving some of these guys around, and you're gonna find that some guys who who get these opportunities and make the most of them, that's what you're looking for. And I hope these type of games are, when we have some of these doubleheaders again, that coach doesn't feel, all right, I've got to play these guys all the time. We got some depth here that some guys are gonna be able to step up. And again, it helps, knowing these guys can hit to where if you need to make a change, you need Will Craddock, say he doesn't start, but he needs to come pinch run for somebody. You're not having a big drop off on that, later on, or if he needs to come pinch hit, for a guy who may be struggling that day. So, yeah, I mean, Will Craddock, Talmadge LeCroy, obviously KJ, Reese Moore, I feel like has had a real good start to the season. Somebody who missed a lot of time in the fall because of some injuries. He hasn't really missed a beat. So again, outside of that Saturday game, I really like to I like seeing what these guys are capable of.
Real quick, where do you like KJ in the lineup? I think we texted about this the other day, you and I.
Yeah.
He's like you said, he's hit all over the lineup. He hit 3rd over the weekend. He hit 2nd last night. I think he hit like 5th or 6th the other night. Me personally, I think he belongs in like that 5 or 6 hole, because ideally Logan Sutter, who went deep last night, finally got his first hit as a Gamecock and first extra base hit, because he didn't have a single extra base hit in the preseason or the fall, apparently. I would like to see Logan eventually work his way into the starting lineup as the 3-hole hitter at some point, because he's supposed to bring the power that you need in this line. That guy should not be hitting 9th in your order. A guy like KJ, I would say probably works in the 5 or 6 hole. He works literally anywhere in the lineup. But your thoughts? Where do you like him best from what you've seen so far?
Yeah, kind of like you said, we definitely texted about that after the weekend series. I like him in that 5 spot. I think it takes a little bit of the pressure off of him. It also extends your lineup a little bit, because I mean, again, it's 5 games. We're not putting a ton of stock into what the numbers look like right now. But just taking a quick look, he's hitting 435. He's got 10 hits, 4 extra base hits. Having that in the middle, in the middle of that lineup, to then where you've got some of these guys, lower down, that gives them somebody on in front of them, and it puts pressure on those arms, for the other team, that I think KJ can be a real force in that 5 spot. And hopefully, if the guys are doing what they're supposed to do in front of them, there's going to be guys on in front of them that he can drive in and really get this lineup moving. So I'm with you. I'll be interested to see what it looks like tomorrow, what lineup coach runs out there tomorrow. But KJ hitting that 5 or 6 spot, I think, is going to be the best for the overall, structure of the team.
Any hitter you're surprised hasn't really come along yet? I think for me, I'd have to go with Ethan Lozama. I think he's been a massive disappointment so far. Again, 5 games. Dawson Harmon didn't play yesterday. He's at 214 this year. Bo Hollins is hitting 063. Like, those are the 3 guys I look at. Like, yeah, those are massive disappointments so far.
Yeah, I think definitely Ethan is a bat that we would like to see get going. Now, 2 of his 3 hits were extra base hits. a double and a triple. So you see, and one of those was almost he thought about going for 3 on his one double or on the double hit. So he was looking for 2 triples at one point. So I think Ethan, if he can get going, that would really help. Dawson Harmon, outside, he hit the home run in game 1, correct? I think it was.
Yes, he home run on opening day. Yep.
Yeah, opening day. I think it was game 1. So outside of that home run, you'd like to see a little bit more out of him. And then obviously Bo's had a tough start. He was one I was real surprised played in both games of the doubleheader.
Me too. I agree.
That was one where I just kind of I looked at the lineup for game 2 and I kind of stared at it a little bit longer as somebody who has really had an abbreviated preseason, due to some injuries. So I was really surprised with him. So I think Will playing as well as he did. Some of these other guys that have swung the bat pretty well, would not hate to see Bo kind of ease back into this lineup a little bit and try to find some advantageous matchups for him to get going.
Yeah. All right. Let's flip into the weekend ahead. We'll talk about the games here in a second. I know a lot of people are asking. I've seen on the message boards on Gamecock Central. People are asking about it in the chat here. The weather for this weekend. I've been looking at it for a few days now. It says 40% chance of rain tomorrow, but it really doesn't look like it's going to happen. Like there's a 15% chance of precipitation at 12 o'clock. But besides that, you're in the clear for tomorrow. Got nothing to worry about there. Saturday's the day where it's like, I don't know what you're going to do because the weather's not looking great. There's at most 40% chance of rain throughout most of the afternoon. By 8 p.m., you'll hit a pocket of no rain for about an hour there. And then you're getting a little bit of rain overnight. But by Sunday at 10 a.m., there will be no more rain. So basically, again, you can't really trust the weather apps and whatnot because who knows? It's tough to predict the weather. Friday, you should be good. Sunday, you should be good. The question is, what do you do Saturday? And you're playing 2 games each day this weekend in the Salute the Troops weekend over at Founders as we start to talk about that a little bit more. I don't know exactly what they're going to do with the weather. I mean, because this is kind of like a regional essentially in a way where you're playing 6 games in 3 days. Have you guys, like when you guys were in, I don't know, did you guys ever deal with any bad weather in 10 or 12 where
no,
move a game?
I was thinking about that. No, I mean, we didn't deal with, we had a lightning delay against, I can't even remember who we played that daggone first game of the regional in 10, but we did have a lightning delay, but we came back and finished the game. So I don't know, to your point with it being so many games happening, I don't see they're going to be able to fit a doubleheader in at any point unless they shorten the games to 7 innings. I know that's been done in the past. I know there's been like 9 7s that happen. But unless you're willing to shorten 1 or 2 of those games to kind of fit some in, because you got to think if we're getting rained out on Saturday, the other game's probably getting rained out on Saturday too. Yeah. So you're talking about trying to make up an additional 2 games on top of another 2 games that are supposed to happen the next day. I think that's just gonna kind of muddy the waters on that. And with these teams being so spread out, like Air Force is in Colorado. Yeah, to Adam's comment, Air Force is in Colorado. Army is in New York. I don't even know. I guess Navy's in Annapolis, in Maryland.
It's not. There's no like to kind of answer the question. Like, let's say, like, I think this happened a few years ago. I think I know one of the more recent South Carolina Clemson series. There was a rain out for one of the games, not the last one from like 2 years ago. It was from like maybe one of Kingston's years in like 22 or something. There was a rain out, and so they played the Clemson South Carolina game that got rained out. I think it was at Clemson like during a midweek. So, but that's different though, because
because they're in state. That's in
Yeah.
state. Yeah, none of these teams are gonna. There's not gonna be, because I don't. Air Force definitely ain't coming back over here anywhere soon.
No.
Yeah, I mean, if any of these games get rained out, there's not going to be a makeup. Maybe coach, I don't know how this generally works. Like if they try to find another game to like throw in a midweek,
probably try to find another. I don't know how that would work this late, like this time of year. I feel like I want to say they've done that before, but
exactly.
I don't know. I will say, so Friday, it's South Carolina Army at 2 p.m. You're going to be good there. Like, yeah, Friday, you'll be good. Air Force Navy at 6 p.m. on Friday. You'll be good. Saturday is the big day where it's like the weather could get affected. South Carolina is playing Navy at 1 p.m. on Saturday. That could be, I don't know. That might be tough. And then Saturday, 5 p.m., Air Force and Army are playing. Sunday, Marshall is coming into town to play Navy at 11 a.m. and then 4 p.m. South Carolina Air Force. And I also don't know what the deal is with the so let's clear up the confusion. There's double headers every day this weekend. There are 2 games being played, but all the teams are playing once a day. Does that make sense? Like South Carolina's playing at 2 p.m. on Friday, 1 p.m. on Saturday, and at 4 p.m. on Sunday. It's kind of like a regional where you're having 4 different teams playing each day.
Yeah.
Does that make sense, guys? What I will say is, could you play Monday? Probably not, because Air Force is going to play at Charleston. I think it's Army that's going to play at the Citadel. And then Navy's going back to Annapolis, I think. So, no, I don't think you could. Maybe like South Carolina's an off day on Tuesday, but I just don't see that even being a possibility. Like,
because there's too much travel. There's too much travel involved for the other schools. That's going to be the thing, because there's always, like, generally on these type of things for a weekend, you have a kind of drop dead time you have to play by so that teams can travel. So you're probably not looking at anything on Monday. Like I said, the most likely outcome is going to be that if there's anything that gets rained out, it's just going to be a game that's going to get rained out. I don't think they're going to be able to fit anything in to make that work, which hopefully that doesn't happen. As we're talking about it right now and it doesn't come to fruition. But if I had to guess, they would probably just lose whatever game gets rained out. And like you said, more likely that would look like would be the Saturday stuff.
And again, we're talking about Saturday being a 40% chance of rain. It's not like it's 100%. So the weather could be wrong. Who knows?
Founders Drain's great, guys, and they got a great grounds crew, and
they got a real good grounds crew. So I think they're gonna do everything possible to get all 6 games in. And if you're interested in more about this weekend and kind of how everything came together, I actually just had a story go up, which I spoke to the last few weeks, been speaking to Army's coach, Navy's coach, Air Force's coach, and then Paul Maneri, just about how this weekend got set up. It's got all information in there about the schedule, how the weekend came to be, because it's something that dates back to Maneri's time at Notre Dame that he's been doing, and then all the plans for this weekend. I will say one interesting thing about this weekend, Army and Navy are not playing each other. And
I saw that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people thought that's kind of weird. It is explained in depth in the story, so definitely go check it out on GamecockCentral.com if you would not mind. What I will say, though, to kind of tease it a little bit, so they play 6 times during the year. So they play a home series in Annapolis and then a home series in West Point. And then they end up typically playing probably another time or 2 in the conference tournament at the end of the year. So they're playing each other 8 times in a year. And I think it was Chris Traz, the coach at Army, brought it up to me when I asked him about it. He kind of said, like, imagine like if South Carolina and Clemson played 8 times a year. Like that's just, you wouldn't want to play them in like a tournament when they're both there. Like that's just not going to happen. So I think it makes sense why they just don't want to play each other is the thing. And it honestly, Maneri's always wanted to have all 3. Like this is only the second time that all three schools are going to be playing against a Maneri-led team since he's been doing this back to his days at Notre Dame. So it was always a hang-up to get Navy to come out to play in these tournaments when he was at LSU and Notre Dame for the most part. So it'll be weird, I think, that Army and Navy aren't playing each other, but when you look at the reasons why, it's like they play each other a handful of times every year.
That makes sense.
There's no reason for them to play. And also, you get a pretty cool scenario now where like Army's playing or Navy's playing Marshall. Like, okay, I don't know how that really worked out, but okay, they're playing at Founders Park. And then Army is going to the Citadel on Monday, which I think is really cool since Citadel is the military college of South Carolina. So that's pretty cool, I would say. And so it works out in that way. We do have a question here I did want to get into before we start really previewing the weekend. What game are you most looking forward to this weekend? It doesn't even have to be just South Carolina. It can be literally any of the games on the schedule.
Me personally, because I kind of went and looked at, what some of the teams that have done so far this year. I'm real interested in that Air Force game. Air Force has played a lot of teams, a lot of big schools in their first 5 games. So they have been battle tested here early, and I think that on this as the game 3 on Sunday, I think will be a nice test for this team after playing Army and Navy on Friday and Saturday. I think that Air Force game's the one I kind of have starred on my personal what I'm looking for this weekend.
I agree. I when I was talking with Mike Kozlowski, the head coach at Army or Navy or Air Force, sorry. He also cool story about him. He played for Paul Maneri at Air Force back in the late 80s, early 90s. So that was a pretty cool time. Talking to this guy was extraordinary because he flew C-17s, served in the Air Force Academy. Really nice guy. But the cool thing is that he loves to schedule road games and go play the toughest opponents. I forget the exact quote he told me, but because I'm going to paraphrase it here as I'm looking for it. He said something along the lines of like, wars aren't played on home soil, as I'm pulling up the quote.
Oh, wow, that's a banger right there.
I'm pulling up the quote. There we go. The exact quote is this: I don't care where we go, who we play. We play a lot of road games, and I'm perfectly happy with that because we don't fight wars on our home soil. So that's what I tell our boys all the time. You get used to being on the road. You get used to fighting on the road. You get used to learn how to win on the road because that's going to be your job. And he's referencing into, these guys are all going to, fight battles for the United States after their time in college is over. So for that reason, I'm going with Air Force as the big game to watch this weekend just because of that alone right there. Like these, and here's the thing about these schools. They are not the same talent level as your SEC schools like South Carolina. What they are, where they probably do have the advantage, though, is the competitive factor of there's not going to be any nonsense in these games. So if South Carolina's playing tired this weekend, they're going to lose. Like that's like Army, Navy, Air Force, they're trying to beat the crap out of South Carolina this weekend and really play tough. And I think that is it makes for a really intriguing challenge this weekend because it's like you're not playing the most difficult competition, but you're playing the most difficult teams in terms of the guys that want to win the most. So South Carolina's gonna have to be on their A game this weekend. And I think because it is kind of set up like a regional in a lot of ways, I think it'd be super impressive for South Carolina to sweep through this series. Like say what you want about the teams that are playing, but the service academies are no joke. Like they're going to bring it this weekend. And I would not be shocked at all if South Carolina lost a game at some point this weekend. We'll get into predictions later on in the show. But yeah, they got to be like, don't be surprised. Like if South Carolina's in a tight knit battle, like they're going to have to really bring it this weekend.
No, because to kind of to highlight what I was talking about with Air Force, they run ruled Penn State in their first game of the year.
Yes,
they lost. they lost 3-4 to Iowa. Then they put up 12 on UConn, beat them 12-6. Then lost a barn burner against Kansas State 8-11. So like they are going to bring it, and that is, like I said, I think that is just I'm just going to be fascinated to see how that game goes for our guys, because that is, like I said, that is quite the opening 4 games for them. And then, again, you throw in, they got Navy, Army, then us. Like that's going to be a real test of a game for our guys. And I'm very excited to see how that looks for them.
And I will say, if South Carolina's only loss heading into Clemson next week is that loss to Northern Kentucky, like if you go 5-0 this week, bravo, take a bow, because that's easier said than done, man. It's tough to win midweek games. We've seen teams already drop midweek games and against lesser competition. And then you got South Carolina going out here and going 2-0 in the midweeks. Then if they went 5-0 against the teams that they're playing this week, I think you feel really good. And if you play Queens next Wednesday, you should win that game. If your only loss is to Northern Kentucky, that is a real nice sign, and it only adds more hype to the Clemson series coming up. Speaking of the weekend here, one interesting note, I asked Paul Maneri about this, thinking that this guy was going to be pitching. Andrew Berg is Army's Friday night starter, pitched 6 really good innings against Clemson back on opening day. I would have thought he would have been the starter pitching for Army tomorrow, given it's game 1 of the weekend for the Black Knights, but turns out it's not going to be the case. Maneri didn't mention exactly who's going to be pitching tomorrow for Army. I haven't really seen that put out there yet, but it's not going to be Andrew Berg, who I sent you a video of, like, hey, watch this guy. Just make sure you see what the guy's all about. Turns out he's not going to be pitching against South Carolina tomorrow, but I think that's a little strange, to be honest. But you brought up a good point before the show. Maybe, like, they're saving him for the pitch against, like, Air Force on Saturday, because that's ultimately a huge game for Army, is playing against those guys over there. And sure, you want to throw your best against the best, but winning against Air Force, I'm sure, holds a lot of value for Army.
And also, and something I thought about after we kind of talked about that earlier, he went he went into the 7th inning against Clemson. So maybe they were just like, he needs an extra day. It's early in the season. I think he only went 70-some pitches, because he was quite efficient against Clemson until that 7th inning. But it very well could be something like they just want to give him an extra day. And something I want to express to the fans after, especially you saying if they go 5-0 this weekend, or if they go 5-0 and they've only lost the 1 game to Northern Kentucky, like, again, we know the fans, it's non-conference, it's all this. Guys, Louisville, the number 8 team in the country, dropped 2 of 3 their opening weekend to a Michigan State team that finished 1 game above 500 last year. So, again, non-conference losses.
That's the Louisville team that made the College World Series last year, mind you.
Made the College World Series against a team that won 1 game over 500 last year. So I'm trying to put everything in perspective. We're not comparing teams and anything like that. I just want everybody to have perspective of these games. Like, these guys are college baseball players too. So it is, like I said, I think it's going to be a very good weekend. Like you said, we're going to get into predictions here in a little bit, but I think it's going to be a good weekend. But it is not to poo-poo if the boys have only lost 1 or 2 games going into Clemson, because it's not easy to do. Like, we go out there and we play the games. So I just wanted to get that out there, because we had texted about that after the loss on Saturday and seeing some of the fan reaction after losing to Northern Kentucky. So just wanted to put that out there for everyone.
Yeah, and then not sure who Navy's going to be throwing. Not sure about Air Force, but again, all 3 games will be a challenge in their own right, and you're really going to have to bring it all weekend long. So we'll see how things go. All right, let's get into some weekend predictions here before we wrap up the show. Again, Army on Friday at 2 p.m. You got Navy at 1 p.m., weather permitting, on Saturday, and then Air Force at 4 p.m. on Sunday. Ethan, will let you start out. How do you see this weekend going for the Gamecocks? I honestly forgot to even mention predictions last week, but I think we probably both would have had the Gamecocks sweeping. So every weekend we will predict. Before every series, like we did last year, we will predict how things go, and hopefully it's at least a series win for the Gamecocks.
Yeah, I definitely think we're going to win the series. I'm going to go ahead and predict the sweep based off two things. One, again, I'm impressed with the pitching so far. I like the plan these guys have on the mound right now. It seems the group as a whole is confident and confident in their stuff. Again, 54 strikeouts to 16 walks to start the year. So you're averaging over 10 Ks a game, and you're averaging under 3 walks a game, I think is what it is. So I'm always going to love that kind of stuff. I think those kind of underlying things really speak to it. And I think this team's very good defensively this year. That has been a spot here the last couple of years where it can get a little wonky with the squad. I think they pitch and I think they play defense. And if the hitting the last couple of weekends is any indication that these guys are starting to have more of a plan in place at the plate and knowing what they want to do when they get in these certain situations, I think that this could springboard them into a really good weekend. So my prediction is I think they're going to sweep. I think they handle Army and Navy handedly. Is probably a little strong, but I think those should be wins going away. And then I think Sunday is going to be a real good test for the team, and I think that one is going to be a little bit closer. And I think we could see some runs on the board, but I feel confident that we should come out with 3 wins this weekend.
Yeah, I would have been a little bit more nervous if Berg was pitching tomorrow for Army, just because of what he did against Clemson.
Yeah.
Clemson offense that's really good and supposed to be good this year goes out there on opening day and makes easy work of them, it felt like, until the late innings. I am also going to go with the sweep. Not as confident, but we've seen the pitching look pretty good. We've seen the hitting pick it up. It's not even really about that. It's just about, look, you gotta play hard. You can't have this stuff about you're tired and whatnot. Like, none of that this weekend. I think the guys are motivated. I think they got that monkey off their back the last 2 games here. They're hitting a lot better. They're playing the way that they're supposed to. And if you play the way you're supposed to, these schools should not really stand a chance. Like, I'm not saying you need to run rule them, but you need to beat them. And
yep.
I think we saw what Clemson did after beating Army on opening day in a close 2-0 game that Berg pitched, and they run ruled them, I think, the next day and then beat them. They shut them out the next 2 games. So we'll see what happens. I think the real game that I think would probably be close is going to be maybe Army on day 1, even if Berg's not pitching. But because he's not, I think South Carolina should be able to handle business. That would have been the only game I would have said, yeah, South Carolina might lose that game if Berg's pitching. And who knows? Maybe we'll get a surprise and maybe Berg will come out of the bullpen or something. I feel like that.
Right.
I feel like when we talk about stuff that's not supposed to happen, it ends up happening anyway. So we'll see. So I think we're both going to go sweep for the weekend, and I think that's a good place to wrap up the show. Again, if you want to check out more on this weekend, how it all came together, it's a really interesting story, I think, that I've been working on for a few weeks. Head on over to GamecockCentral.com to check it on out. Again, why South Carolina is playing the 3 U.S. service academies this weekend over at Founders Park. First pitch tomorrow afternoon, 2 p.m., taking on Army. 1 p.m. on Saturday, taking on Navy. And then Sunday, 4 p.m., taking on the Air Force Academy. Appreciate you guys tuning in. As always, next week, we will be back live next Thursday. Boy, we will have a big weekend to talk about. Gamecock Tigers going down next week in a 3-game series. But first, salute the troops weekend over at the ballpark. Appreciate you guys tuning in as always, and we will see you guys next week.